Born Dorothea Payne in 1768, Dolley Madison was raised by her Puritan father in Philadelphia, which she was able to attend a Quaker school in. And she also received tutoring at home, making her fairly educated for a woman during her time. Due to her family being in good social standing, she was able to maintain one of her own due to her charismatic nature, which would go on to help her in her future role as First Lady. In 1794, she married the fourth President of the United States, James Madison, and she stepped into her role of First Lady fairly quickly. While having less of an interest in politics than her husband, she was able to use her charm and her wit to strategically host events and sway public opinion in the direction of her husband. During the War of 1812, the British invaded Washington, D.C., setting fire to the White House, and Dolley Madison courageously went back in to rescue numerous historical documents, and she even took the life-size portrait of George Washington, broke the frame, ripped the canvas off the frame, and rolled it up and saved the painting as a display of patriotism. Her virtue and her patriotism inspired her to carry out her duty to the country by making that trip back into the White House and saving all of those relics. This is how she championed the idea of Republican motherhood, to raise a man that reflected these three defining traits as they become functioning members of society. This gave new meaning to the domestic role of a mother, as she now has more power within the household in hindsight, as she instills the morals of a good Christian into her children. Since Madison was a public figure, the ideas behind Republican motherhood spread fairly quickly. Part of the power within this idea of Republican motherhood is that women were more aware of their influence on these young men as they would soon grow up to be voting citizens, which could help them in return with women getting rights. And it's interesting to see that we still hold these values when it comes to raising children today. And it's interesting to see that in the current political and economic climate of our country, people are more hesitant when it comes to having children. So our ideas and beliefs behind these traits are changing right in front of our very eyes. A couple other things that are important to keep in mind are the shift in view of women by society, whereas they were the temptresses and seductresses leading men astray from God. The roles kind of reversed, where women were seen as pure and men were more the corrupters, as well as sentimentalism and the fact that marriages were less business, more pleasure. That also had a lot to do with the morals behind Republican motherhood. Part of why Republican motherhood was so important is that it was thought that a woman should be kept within the home as it was her place, and now the culture of Republican motherhood promotes that the very act of being a good mother, instilling these traits onto children, was seen as a political act within itself, giving women more of a political edge even though they couldn't vote. It's a double-edged sword, because as we begin to see the idea of an all-American man and how one is brought up, it perpetuates the idea that a woman's place is secondary to the man and therefore of less importance. Dolley Madison was very popular between politicians and the general public, and she was dubbed the first lady, setting precedent for what would to come after her for future first ladies. Not only was she able to aid her husband in his political adventures, just by socializing and making connections and networking, to her saving a lot of documents and relics from the White House during the fire. It's no surprise as why she was so popular.